As we discussed, Kenyon has once again suggested a really, really nebulous topic that I didn't know how to tackle. So
I love it.
Today, I'll be telling you about one potential way something can be old switcherooed in terms of criminality, and that is the chain of custody.
Yes.
Ooh.
So we really have never talked about this before.
So important.
Yeah, and it's like, it plays a big role in like lots of movies.
It's well known.
Yeah, so I just want to tell you about kind of how that works. And I also sort of went down a rabbit hole because I found it extremely interesting.
Okay.
So note that the chain of custody exists outside of criminal proceedings. So like, for example, in clinical trials for vaccines, tracing food products through like the supply chain, establishing provenance in art and antiques. So like figuring out who owned it when and making sure there were no gaps. And also just in the good old postal service.
Makes sense.
Tracking numbers. This is essentially the chain of custody. So here's the definition from the National Library of Medicine. The chain of custody, or the COC, the COC, is the most critical process of evidence documentation. It is necessary to assure the court of law that the evidence is authentic, i.e. that it is the same evidence seized at the crime scene and that it was at all times in the custody of a person designated to handle it and for which it was never unaccounted. It always had a babysitter. It was always, people always knew where it was.
Wasn't tampered with.
Wasn't tampered with, wasn't contaminated. Although it is a lengthy process, it is legally required for evidence to be relevant in the court. The continuity of possession of evidence or custody of evidence is and its movement and location from the point of discovery and recovery, so at the scene of a crime or from a person, to its transport to the laboratory for examination and until the time it is allowed and admitted in the court is known as the chain of custody or the chain of evidence. So this is obviously to prevent tampering or contamination of the evidence.
Got it.
The chain of custody in literal terms is basically a paper trail or chronological documentation. In full, this documentation should report who, what, where, when the evidence was initially taken into custody, all the way to the point in a courtroom when a person could ask, right now, where is that bloody shirt?
Okay, so we should always know who's in possession, who's touching it, where it is, who has touched it.
Who has touched it, when, what authority they had to touch it.
Okay.
We'll get to it. So there is, of course, a different scenario for, let's say, digital or electronic evidence, because that would be like,
who touched that email?
It's in the cloud. I don't know. But the idea is the same. Evidence technicians are the ones responsible for keeping that chain intact and in good shape. Evidence technicians, I feel like I'd be a really good evidence technician.
That'd be fun.
They also collect and process fingerprints. They evaluate evidence. So they're the ones who you get a bunch of shit from a crime scene and then they're like, okay, this is
relevant and this
just
is
a towel.
clutter.
This is evidence. Yeah.
Oh, you would be good at that.
They manage the property seized by the government. So they
Put
take
that
it.
tape up. Put a guard there.
I think so. Yeah. So they're the ones that handle it in general, because it's not like the detectives. It's not the cops. They hand it over to an evidence tech.
You gotta have a lot of trust in whoever has this position.
Oh,
So they usually work really, really independently, like through all of the systems, all of like the police and legal systems. They also prepare courtroom exhibits.
Oh,
How fun. It would be like a little science project.
Totally.
This is
Like
your
poster
next
board.
Yeah.
job.
Just like the white gloves all the time, being really careful with the blowpoke.
Yeah,
Oh,
little
the blowpoke.
boxes of things.
On a
And-
hillside.
And they testify in court.
Luck.
which I would also be really good at.
You would. This combines your elements of your public speaking talent, your attention to detail, your curios, your love of like
Organization.
diorama
Yes.
and decoration.
Yes.
This checks every fucking box for
we
you.
need to spend more time in school learning
Actually
about
identifying our own
actual
interests.
jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
learning beyond just the big archetype jobs that everyone already
a
knows
teacher,
about.
a doctor.
Because they
Yeah.
have us take those fucking aptitude tests that have like 6 possibilities
Right.
for a job. And
Which
like
my
Truck
mom
driver.
got
evidence technician
drill
was
sergeant.
not one of them.
You
You
got,
got
drill
drill
sergeant?
My
Sergeant?
mom
Oh, well, okay.
got
that checks.
drill
Yeah.
sergeant.
No, that's
I
spot
can see
on.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
The one case where it was
They nailed it.
spot
They
on.
fully nailed it.
So the unbroken chain of custody is typically something the prosecutor has to prove in a criminal case, and defense teams will often try to poke holes in that in order to get evidence dismissed from the trial so that the jury
poke
doesn't see it. So they might try to argue that the evidence was planted on the accused, or that it was mishandled after the fact to mislead investigators or to mislead the jury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the chain of custody is something that will almost always be part of a prosecution's case.
Wasn't it a huge part of the Stephen Avery thing where they like did all these like intense searches and
Yep.
then on like the 5th search
Then they found the car
something?
keys.
They found the
Yeah.
car keys. Yeah.
Like in plain sight.
Yeah. That was so
I think-
fucking dumb.
I mean, we know this. I think Stephen Avery is sketchy as shit.
Yeah.
But the cops were also
Framed the fuck out of
sketchy as
him.
shit. Yeah.
yep. That is that's a good case of the reasonable doubt. Like,
Mm-hmm.
as we say, no victim is perfect,
Mm-hmm.
but also no perpetrator is necessarily like 100%. And you can still be like a weird sketcho, but
Right.
not
And not be a murderer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about Michael Peterson.
Yeah.
Total
no.
fucking bizarre
You
weirdo.
can be guilty and
Yeah.
still not deserve, like, no one deserves being framed.
1,000%.
Like, even if he was guilty.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you are so weirdly convinced that Michael Peterson is innocent that
He's-
it concerns me.
Yeah, please don't start writing to him or anything. Like, don't become number 3.
Oh God! Don't go near
No.
any
Number 4.
stairs.
He's so old. I'm not, no, I don't want any personal contact with anybody. The two of you, I'm good. My husband, I guess. I don't need new people in my life.
That's actually very fair. I never have to worry about Lucy ending up in like an inmate love situation
Yeah.
because she
No.
wants no new friends.
Mm-hmm.
No. And just having the mental burden of like, oh, I have to write back to him.
Yeah.
I haven't emailed him back yet.
I don't have the mental fortitude. I don't have the executive function for mail correspondence.
No.
Mm-mm.
MAIL or MALE.
Any kind.
I can't.
Yeah.
So here's an example of the chain of custody from thoughtco.com. A police officer collects a gun at a crime scene and places it in a sealed container. We'll get to the sealed containers.
Ooh.
The police officer then gives the gun to a police forensics technician, the evidence technician.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence technician removes the gun from the container, collects fingerprints and other evidence present on the weapon, and places the gun, along with the evidence collected from it, back into the sealed container or
Okay.
into a different sealed container. The technician then gives the gun and related evidence to a police evidence technician. Oh, wait. Maybe, okay. I shouldn't have replaced forensic technician with evidence technician. You know what? Maybe they're kind of interchangeable.
A
Let's go with that.
technician.
A technician. Then they give it to a different technician, and that evidence technician stores the gun and related evidence in a secure place and records everyone who accesses the evidence during the investigation until final disposition of the case. So
wait, are those like in the scenes in movies when you go down to the evidence locker and there's like
out?
Yep.
Well,
yep.
and there's like some young rookie cop that's like sitting at the front desk that's signing people in and out.
That's the evidence technician.
Okay.
The second one, not the one that is dusting it for fingerprints,
And, like,
but the
handling
one that's
evidence.
handling the storage of it.
Correct. And I shouldn't have replaced. So the one who dusts for fingerprints, that would be a forensics technician.
That makes more sense.
And the thing about the evidence technician, who I said about the fingerprints, they take fingerprints. I think they're like at the police station taking perps fingerprints when they're booked in.
Sure.
That
Okay.
was my understanding. Because
That
then
tracks.
the fingerprints are then evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
It counts as records that need to be kept unmolested.
You don't want to have an old switcheroo with the fingerprints.
Sure
Exactly.
don't.
Yep. So each sample or piece of evidence goes in its own tamper evident bag or container, and each bag or container has its own chain of custody form. I have a couple samples of these chains of custody
Tamper
forms.
evident
Tamper
means
Tamper
tamper
evident.
evident means if you fuck with it, it's going to be really obvious. Like there will be indicators that it's been tampered with.
It'll
right?
be like taped shut.
Okay. So
So
like
if
the
you-
bank bags that get you with fucking blue ink would be tamper evident bags.
Yeah, but we wouldn't use that in this scenario.
Right. But that's just an example that makes sense to me.
Yeah. It basically means that they're taped shut with
You'd
tape.
have to cut the tape.
You'd have to cut the tape and, yeah. It is evident if you tamper with it.
Got it. That makes sense.
So if it gets transferred to a new bag or container, it gets a new separate chain of custody form. So pieces of evidence can often have multiple forms.
Because they moved around or. Got it.
So this form has to include at least the following information. We have the unique identifier of the container itself. So we know that it was maybe not the original container or whatever.
But it's been stored in this Tupperware.
Okay.
The name and signature of the person who collected the sample initially. The official address and contact number of that person or that entity, like making all this happen, like the police station. The name of the recipient, who that package is going to, the laboratory's address, and the details of each sample, because sometimes there are multiple samples in the same container, including a unique identifier and matrix. It's like a thorough description. The date and time of collection, the type of analysis required, whether we want fingerprints off of this, we want to determine what kind of blood this is, or, whatever. The signatures of everyone involved in the chain of possession with the date and the time. So it'll be like a list, like a library card. Not like an ID library card, but like
but the checkout that's
book,
on the inside cover.
the slip that goes in the book.
Yeah.
Which seems so fucking ancient, but I remember that. That was a thing.
Yep.
The date and method of delivery. So it's delivered here on February 9th via
Carrier pigeon.
the evidence van of this jurisdiction. The authorization for the analysis of the sample and any other information about the sample.
So it's like they pulled it out because they wanted to get fingerprints off of this thing. Now here's the authorization that this person is going to get the fingerprints off of this thing. Okay.
So
Yeah.
who's
This is
analyzing
deep.
all this information, or is no one analyzing
We're about
it?
to get to it, and this is
Okay.
my favorite part.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
All right.
So, where does the evidence go? To the crime or forensic laboratory, a facility where various analyses are performed. I desperately want to tour a crime lab.
Yeah.
It is like a fun house of forensics. That's where everything cool happens. So this is from my boyfriend. I'm like breathing hard. Okay.
Yeah, we can tell.
So cute. You're so pregnant. It's so cute.
Very excited.
I throw up my hands just once and I'm out of breath. Okay.
Yep.
Crime laboratories can investigate physical, chemical, biological, or digital evidence and often employ specialists in a variety of disciplines, including behavioral forensic science, forensic pathology, forensic anthropology, crime scene investigation, and ballistics.
Nice. Okay.
Many crime labs are publicly funded and administered by federal, state, or provincial or local government, although there are a growing number of private labs that specialize in fields such as drug analysis and DNA fingerprinting. So, here's a fun fact for you. England and Wales are among the few places in the world to have exclusively privatized crime labs.
That's really surprising to me. I would think it'd be more likely to have that here where we privatize fucking everything.
Yeah.
We'll kind of get to the privatization and why it's actually an ethical issue to have it
So it's so
run
that they're
by...
not trying to help the prosecution necessarily.
We'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, all crime labs have some sort of evidence intake unit where the evidence is received and that little form is filled out, and it's assigned a unique laboratory and case identifier. So this may be a number assigned by a clerk or a barcode affixed to each item and tracked by a computer. So today I would imagine it's more likely it spits out a barcode. You put the barcode on the bag, you put the same barcode on a list
it has
somewhere.
to get scanned everywhere it goes.
Right.
Yeah. So the barcode system generates an automatic chain of custody of the evidence and makes it possible to determine its location in the lab at any time. From login, the evidence is usually stored in a secure environment, which may be a temporary storage area or the main storage area for all the evidence in the lab until it's assigned to one or more examiners.
Or like a flood-prone basement in a
yeah.
swampy city.
Yeah.
Or
New Orleans.
Or like an asbestos-filled dry rot attic
About to cave
about
in.
to set fire.
Yes. Very flammable.
Correct.
Yep.
Ideally.
That is ideal, but we should be so lucky. Examiners may have separate storage areas for their own evidence. So there are different units inside the crime lab. And maybe each unit, depending on the size of the lab, each unit might have its own area for storage. And this is where I got really excited about the different units.
This is where you've been excited? Okay.
Yeah.
This whole time.
You had
It's
to
a
stop
roller
for
coaster.
breath.
I know. So I'm trying to power through. So, different units in the drug lab. And of course, not every lab has all these different units, but these are like the main variety. There are drug units where they inspect pills, powders, and liquids.
I swear, it was Parmesan cheese.
Officer.
You like the donuts, eh?
Oh, God.
They have the biology unit where they look at blood, semen, saliva, bones, plant material, also bugs. So they need to look at like decomposition.
Assess those maggots, baby.
They have, Kenyon, you'd like this, a trace evidence unit.
Love it. Love it.
Where they look at fibers, fire, and explosive residues to determine like arson, maybe.
They should have an entire unit only for maroon fibers.
They really
We are
should.
overwhelmed with them.
They're everywhere.
They are everywhere.
The trace evidence unit would also look at glass, like shattered, like broken glass, different soils, paints and coatings, paint chips. They would also look at trace evidence like hair and skin, even though the biology unit would be like, it would that kind of thing would either be in the biology unit or the trace evidence
I guess it would
unit.
depend on the amount of it. Like if it's really, really trace evidence, then I guess it would have to be handled by this unit.
And of course, there's going to be overlap between the units too. They also have a firearms and tool marks unit.
Yikes.
So that could be like, for example, restoring obliterated serial numbers on weapons,
Cool.
matching spent bullets to the weapon that fired them. But also something like determining whether a certain pair of wire cutters cut a particular wire.
Wow.
Because that kind of examination is super similar to like the ballistics kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're lining up.
Wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Tool marks.
Certain tools are going to leave certain patterns. That makes perfect sense.
Isn't that so cool?
That's very cool.
We have our fingerprint unit. We have the digital unit. So that handles stuff like digital photos or data from computers. We have the toxicology unit, which usually supports the medical examiner. So I'd be like, if this person was drunk when they got in this car accident or whatever. And they also have the questioned documents unit, which is where they examine handwriting and typewriting to determine the author or the authenticity of the document.
I feel like I would be extremely good at this.
You really
Very
would.
Cool.
They also analyze.
I wouldn't be good at any of this.
Not your skill set.
No.
Not even the signing things in and out.
No, because I will definitely space out and forget. I'll test all the drugs with my mouth and nose.
You'd be the surly detective.
Sure.
Yeah. The detective's partner.
You would be the secretary who is like clackety clack clack clacking with her nails.
1,000%.
Giving people shit and not letting people in that don't have the right authorization.
All the corrupt cops.
Yeah.
I will squeal immediately.
You'd be the, what are you here for? I don't think so. Not today.
Yep.
I'm about to go on lunch.
With a pen on a long chain.
Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.